Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Fran and today we will be addressing the question of free will. First of all, let me introduce myself. I come from a sort of scientific background, having an honors degree in psychology and a diploma in cognitive behavioral therapy. I graduated in the UK, so I have a very pragmatic and practical approach to psychology. One based on rigorous experiments and objective observation. Now, I use the term objective in loose terms as I don't really believe that anything is truly objective. As Einstein proved in relativity, everything is relative to the perspective of the observer, even things that we thought to be absolute, such as time and space. Now, how does this bear on the question of free will? Well, according to classical Newtonian physics, everything in the known universe could be calculated or predicted in principle. In other words, if it were possible to know the present state of every particle in the universe, in principle, we could predict the unfolding of the universe forevermore. To rephrase this, we can't predict the future because of a lack of knowledge or ignorance, if you will. However, the future is already laid out by the present state of affairs, and it has been since the beginning of time. Now, we've accepted this as a fact for centuries, to the point that we had even taken for granted such an assumption. Moreover, we felt that such a view of the universe was reassuring in a sense that it made life somewhat safe and predictable. We could rely on this scientific method in order to predict future outcomes. For instance, thanks to Newton's laws of motion, you could predict the trajectory of moving bodies with great accuracy once you took into account all the necessary variables. It never crossed our worried analytical minds to question where such a deterministic view would leave free will. If in principle it is possible to predict the future, then whatever we do, we cannot change it. What would be the point of having free will if it had no bearing on the state of the universe in which we live? If we live in a block-type universe and the future already exists, then what is the point of making choices? Or worse yet, are we puppets who just live under the illusion of having free will, but whose strings are pulled by some unknown force or entity? When you think of it, there is nothing less scientific than determinism. What would be the point of having evolved consciousness in the first place? If Darwin was right and species develop traits which enable survival and evolution, then what would be the point of having free will if it had no bearing on how the future evolves? In any case, determinism was widely accepted for centuries as an objective and scientific description of reality. Today, many proponents of the law of attraction maintain that no one has free will in our own reality, as others are just aspects of ourselves pushed out. In other words, we can directly affect people's behavior by changing ourselves, our vibration, and the content of our subconscious mind. And the scientific world gasps in horror upon hearing these outlandish claims. What about free will, they ask? Well, to quote Alanis Morissette, now, isn't that ironic? Those who were firm believers in a deterministic world in which we had a set in stone inescapable fate now recoil at the thought of people not having free will. But let's take a look at quantum physics. The latest interpretation of quantum mechanics suggests that at the fundamental level, nothing can even be spoken about until observed. A fuzzy quantum wave of probabilities collapses into a definite state upon being observed. Before observation, there are only possibilities. Moreover, according to Heisenberg, even in principle, you could never know everything you need to know about the present state of the universe, not because of our ignorance, but because the more precisely you try to measure a quantum state, the fuzzier it becomes. For instance, The more precisely you try to measure the position of a subatomic particle, the less you can know about its momentum, and vice versa. This is the so-called Heisenberg uncertainty principle. This uncertainty is built into the fabric of the universe. To rephrase this, we don't know the future not because of our ignorance, but because it doesn't exist until observed. And depending on how you decide to observe it, it will look different. For instance, if you decide to measure the position of the particle, this will prevent you from ever knowing its momentum with any precision. What you focus on will come to life or be more real than what you decide to ignore. Doesn't this begin to sound like the law of attraction? Where attention goes, energy flows. Now, where does this leave free will in quantum physics? Surely, an observing consciousness which decides what to focus on is nothing but free will. We definitely have free will, but perhaps not in the ego-centered way that we are accustomed to. You see, at the fundamental level, there is no separation, no distinction. We are quantum soup. The concept of separation arises at the macroscopic level. Again, it's an illusion caused by our limited human perception. Electrons, the building blocks of matter, are being found to be popping in and out of existence without traveling from A to B without passing through the space in between. And since all electrons are exactly the same, you cannot distinguish between them. Someone has even suggested that there might be just one electron in the entire universe. So is it possible that there is just one consciousness and that it splits itself into different forms so as to perceive itself from different perspectives and expand? In other words, is it possible that each of us has free will and can affect the other through vibrations, as at the fundamental level there is no separation and we are all one? I know this is a little too much to take in all at once. And you might ask, if everyone is really as pushed out, then how can everyone have free will? Who affects whom? The only answer that I can come up with is that we are but different projections of the same consciousness, and we all have free will from our own limited perspective. I know it sounds crazy, but doesn't it remind you of Einstein's claim that time and space are different for different observers, and that all observers are right from their own frame of reference? Now let's bring quantum physics into it again. If there are infinite parallel realities, as suggested by the many worlds interpretation, then we all have free will, each on a different plane. Or if we choose to believe the holographic interpretation of quantum physics, we are all different images of the same hologram from a different perspective. And just like a hologram, if you cut it into smaller pieces, each piece still contains the whole hologram. It doesn't matter how many pieces you split it into or how small they are. So could we just be different pieces of a holographic consciousness which project a different image depending on what we choose to focus on? And could it be that free will is the means through which we choose what image to project, what reality to bring to life? Neville Goddard, a spiritual teacher from the 1940s, used to say that creation is finished. Everything already exists. This claim does remind us of the deterministic view of the block universe. Yet, if we bring quantum physics into it, there isn't just one version of the universe, but infinite. If we try to reconcile all these contradictory theories, what emerges is a multidimensional reality which already exists and where conscious beings do not change or create the future, but simply choose which reality to experience, either consciously through free will or unconsciously through preconceived notions and subconscious schemata. In other words, when you use your free will to influence others, you're not really manipulating or influencing anyone. You're simply choosing which version of them to experience, to bring to life, to collapse. And you can only do this by changing your consciousness, your observation. You're not changing others, you're changing the internal observer. And you're always doing this, whether you are aware of it or not. All that the law of attraction proposes is that you become a lucid dreamer, a conscious experiencer, rather than manifesting by default. Now, if you've come this far, congratulations. I hope your brain is not completely mashed. This is it for today. If you've enjoyed this content, then you might be crazy enough to hit the subscribe button. And if you like the videos, then please hit the like option, as this will enable more crazy people like ourselves to access it. In any case, thank you for watching. Have a wonderful awakened day.